Hi, friends and travelers. It's Michael here from Solstice. It is an absolutely beautiful winter day here in Minnesota. It's like in the upper 30s, maybe lower 30s. I don't know. It's beautiful out. There's no snow on the ground. But here in the northern hemisphere, the winter solstice is just 2 days away. This Thursday, the solstice takes place, and I wanted to take a moment to reflect and share something that I've been processing through. I don't know about you, but I'm personally on this journey to really seek out and understand consciousness and mysticism, but grounded in reality of my human state. So I wanted to kind of talk about this and distill down a lot of these subjective experiences that we have as we explore spirituality or consciousness, to be able to communicate and relate these things, the things that are on the consciousness level, into what we often refer to as the material plane, or the world that we live in, this meat casing that as a human being. Well, when you're exploring states of consciousness, mysticism, spirituality, and other expanded states of consciousness, it invariably leads you to highly subjective experiences. And you may have coincidences here between, like, for example, some psychedelic substances, there are consistencies in people's experiences, but still the bulk of the experience is subjective. It's all in your mind. And one of the challenges that we have when we're working both with expanded states of consciousness or spirituality, plus the fact that we live in this body and we're in a physical space, how do you reconcile those two? Because the two worlds, they look at each other with slight animosity and mistrust. Like, for example, from my perspective as a human being, with flesh, blood, real life problems and relationships and all that, we look upon the world of spirituality and expanded states of consciousness with suspect and with mistrust, because a lot of it comes across as very woo-woo, or it's all in your head. Conversely, and on the flip side, for those of us that have been exploring expanded states of consciousness, we also approach the material world with mistrust, because not everything that we see here is actually truth. A lot of it is subjective to our own experiences, subjective to our history, the family upbringing that we had, the experiences we've had through life. So that in itself is subjective too. Some of it is objective, of course. So there, to me, is the balance, is as we're exploring both the material space as a human being and expanded states of consciousness, whether through meditation, breath work, shamanic drumming, psychedelic substances and plant medicines, like in the ayahuasca journey, other practices like that. In both of those worlds, there is subjective realities and objective realities. So one of the things I think to help bring down the barriers of trust is to acknowledge and investigate in our experiences, what are the things that I'm pulling from this experience that are subjective, and what are the things that I'm pulling from here that are objective, meaning that this is a universally relatable thing versus this is something that I'm experiencing, but other people could easily go, yeah, I've never had that. I've never experienced that. That is subjective reality. So, which brings me to my final point. The final thing that I've been kind of trying to culminate my own personal spiritual journey in, and that is integration. In psychedelic therapy, integration is probably one of the most important steps in therapy. So after you have this amazing experience in your mind, in these altered states of consciousness, at the end of the day, what is your intention? And that's something that you come to these medicines, plant medicines, with. What is your intention? Or these practices, what is your intention in shamanic drumming? Or what is your intention for meditation? What is your intention for the other practices that you are adopting or considering? At some point, you should be able to answer that question with, well, I want to work out my faith, or I want to become a more loving human being. I want to be kind, compassionate, caring. I want to live in harmony with nature. I want to, whatever it is, figure out for yourself what that is, and then work it out. Integrate your practice. Because if something is just entirely subjective, for example, chakras are a very divisive conversational topic. There are a lot of people that speak with them with personal experience and authenticity, and there are a lot of people who have grown up in the practice that it's reality for them. And for those of us who have not grown up with those experiences, it feels very subjective. So how do you integrate that stuff? How do you go beyond the subjective experience to objective reality? And that's integration. It's take the pieces of your practice and use that, bring it into your material world, into your material space, your mind, your body, your actions, your thoughts, your speech, how you treat one another. Use that and integrate it to become a more loving, kind, compassionate human being. That, for me, is the litmus test if something's bullshit or not. So and for me, on my spiritual journey, I am totally a la carte, man. I am grabbing from Eastern mysticism. I'm grabbing from Buddhist stuff, Taoism, Stoicism, lots of different frameworks for living. And I'm pulling out different pieces that work for me. But as I'm pulling these things out, one of the questions I have to ask myself is, what does this lead to? Does it lead to just self-serving spirituality where I'm this amazing spiritual human being, I'm connected, and my energy's flowing through all the chakras, and I'm properly aligned? If it doesn't make you a more loving human being, you're wasting your time, I think. That's my opinion. But anyways, that's just the thought that I wanted to share coming up with the solstice here. So as we prepare ourselves for celebrating the return of longer daylight, longer days, be mindful about your spiritual journey and understand that a lot of these things are really subjective, and they're very, 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 very difficult to talk about because they're ineffable. It's very difficult to describe these things in ways that don't sound woo-woo. They can only really be experienced. But in that experience, as you're experiencing altered states of consciousness or meditation or whatever, continually ask yourself the question, get a barometric reading on yourself as a human being, and am I becoming more loving? And it's not that you have to set this high standard for yourself and set yourself up for failure. It's just, are you progressing as a human being? Are you evolving? Are you being kind in this moment? Are you present when you're hanging out with your friends or with your spouse or your kids? Are you present in that moment? Or is your head off somewhere else? That's, for me, where the rubber hits the road in spirituality. So those are just a few thoughts. I went on longer than I thought, but hopefully this might help spur some more thoughts in you and spur some conversations with other people that that are also kind of exploring these worlds with you or with us all collectively. Have a wonderful winter solstice. Take care, my friends. I love you very dearly. Continue being conscious and being present. See ya.